Iniciamos esta semana o todo el día completo de interoperabilidad y en este caso nuestra primer participante, Ginny, I will introduce you in Spanish, so sorry. She's a good friend. We had work, hemos trabajado mucho tiempo juntos en todo lo que es el grupo de educación de HL7 Internacional y hemos trabajado mucho juntos en muchos working group meetings en los cuales participamos. Actualmente Virginia es parte es secretaria de HL7 Internacional, ya si bien participa en la parte de educación, eh, está muy activa ya directamente en la organización de HL7 Internacional. Viene trabajando hace mucho tiempo en todo lo que tiene que ver con el trabajo de empoderamiento de paciente, tiene trabajó mucho tiempo cumpliendo rol docente y de actividad de educación en HL7 Internacional, digamos, desde mucho tiempo atrás, digamos, desde HL7 versión 2. Y, eh, y bueno, y en la Universidad de Columbia también es docente. La idea de la presentación de hoy, Ginny, es contar cómo se está empoderando, digamos, la idea de empezar a empoderar al paciente desde el punto de vista de HL7 Internacional. Ginny, you can start whatever you want.
Thank you, Fernando. So, good morning, everyone. My presentation today is called Amplifying the Voice of the Patient at HL7. And I'm going to talk today about HL7's Patient Empowerment Work Group, which is a relatively new work group. And the mission of this work group is to promote and amplify the viewpoint of patients and their caregivers in HL7 standards work in support of the HL7 mission. And by caregiver, I mean people who help patients, such as family members or loved ones or friends, who help them navigate the healthcare system and care for them. Sometimes a patient may hire a professional patient advocate to navigate the system, but usually it's mom or dad or sister or daughter or brother. I want to tell you a little bit about the history of the Patient Empowerment Work Group. It all started in 2018 when Dave DeBronkart was invited to be the keynote speaker at the HL7 Dev Days conference in Amsterdam. And Dev Days is our major FHIR implementation conference. Now, who is Dave? Dave is known as ePatient Dave, well known internationally for advocating for patients to have access to their data. And in fact, he did a TED Talk in 2011 in Amsterdam, which perhaps the FHIR people saw. And even did a song in 2012 that you can find on YouTube called "Gimme My Damn Data," where DAM stands for Data About Me. And when Dave went to Dev Days, Dave is a cancer survivor, and found that when he could get his data, he was much more empowered and equipped to help in his own care. He recently said to me, it was because of FHIR I came out of retirement, because I knew that this was a way we could actually get our data electronically. So then Dave became involved in Dev Days. And then in the summer of 2019, at a subsequent Dev Days conference, one of those breaks in the hallway happened between Dave and several other patient advocates at Dev Days and several FHIR leaders. and they said we should do something. And actually, I met with them too, but I met with them because they posted it on chat.fire.org. And I said, I would like to be a part of this. And then in fall of 2019, the question was, so there should be a group that's related to patients at HL7, but what kind of group should it be? And we decided it should be a work group, because an HL7 work group can make decisions about what projects should go forward, what projects they want to be a part of, and even decide to implement standards and implementation guides. Develop standards and implementation guides. So in winter of 2020, the work group was approved. Now it's fall 2021, and we have a thriving community and numerous projects and initiatives. So who participates today? Well, we have patients and we have caregivers. We have advocates for patients and caregivers. We have patient engagement experts, people that do research on patient empowerment, people who write books on it. And we have others who are interested in the cause. We have international participation, but we don't have any participation from Latin America. And we definitely always need more patient and caregiver perspectives. So what do we actually do? Well, I will tell you what our charter says, which we do follow. Our work group provides an entry point for patients and caregivers and advocates interested in participating in HL7. We ensure that the impact on patients is a consideration in HL7 standards work. I recall at the last working group meeting, there was a large meeting with many work groups participating. Patient empowerment was participating because it's a particular area we're interested in. And everyone was talking, and then one of our members said, but wait a minute, did you consider the patient in that? Maybe the patient wants that information as well. So we ensure that the impact on patients is a consideration in all of HL7's work. And we develop standards and implementation guides. There's quite a lot that the Patient Empowerment Work Group could take on. So one of our first efforts was to prioritize. And in our prioritization exercise, we came up with 4 top priorities. We noticed that more and more information was now being exposed to patients on FHIR APIs. But patients could only query that data. They could not respond. They could not contribute information. So most of our initial priorities focused on that. The first was patient contributed data, which is how can a patient contribute to their record? The other was corrections to errors in the record. People complain that the records were full of errors, and how can they get them fixed using FHIR? And care planning. All these people out there are developing care plans for patients. The patient wants the care plan, and the patient wants to contribute to that care plan. What's important to them, their goals. And some really important things like their end of life wishes, and consents, and privacy. Based on our initial priorities, we sponsored 3 projects: the Patient Contributed Data White Paper, Patient Requests for Corrections, FHIR IG, and the Advanced Directives Interoperability FHIR IG. And I'm going to talk a little bit about all 3 of those in a minute. But that's not all we're working on in the work group. We're continually looking at all the new project scope statements that are written, and other groups are reaching out to us on a regular basis. We have a consumer outreach subgroup. We are co-sponsoring numerous projects such as international patient access, the Smart Vaccine Cards Project, and more. And we have an active effort looking at how we can ensure security of FHIR application and API implementations, looking at that from the patient perspective. And we often make proposals to the HL7 Policy Advisory Committee to help impact regulatory efforts related to patients and interoperability. As you can see, while we have a nice community working on this, we have more work than people, and help is wanted. Let me talk about our 3 projects that we sponsor. Patient contributed data, the project need. The patient needs the ability to contribute information for their care. While some efforts exist to provide interoperability standards in this area, more progress is needed. We believe there are gaps. Here's a perspective from a patient. One of the recurring devaluing experiences of chronic illness is how often you depend on a doctor to write down words that capture your situation correctly, and how your own word is given no weight at all by the many gatekeepers you encounter, receptionists, case officers, on and on. I don't know how often I beg my doctors to write words that capture my situation. And I don't know how often I beg gatekeepers to understand that what doctors had written was only part of the picture. I don't know how often I felt unheard, how often I've been treated as an annoyance by all sides, caught in between doctors who couldn't imagine how little weight my words would have, and gatekeepers who insisted my words had no weight at all. Only doctors' words counted. This patient does not sound very empowered. Patients need to be able to contribute. So the purpose of the patient contributed data white paper is to research and define this concept of patient contributed data. There's already a concept out there of patient generated health data. Our concept is a bit wider. Determine current standards for sharing versus outstanding needs, and find the gaps, and write a white paper that incorporates our findings and makes recommendations for a path forward. Here are some components we see of patient contributed data. Clinical data that's held by the patient. A patient has a discharge summary from a hospital and they want to bring it to their doctor. They have a radiology report and they want to bring it into the hospital. Personal and family health history, device created data. Maybe it's their Fitbit data, or maybe it's data that's coming from a device that's implanted inside them and the patient wants access to the data that's coming out of their body. Patient reported outcomes or symptoms, or even patient summaries of their data. A personal experience of care, a reflective experience. Genomic data. Patient goals and treatment desires, and patient corrections. So here's the current state of that project and how you can help. We are finishing our research and we're getting ready to write our white paper. We're looking for additional experts still to interview and use cases of people that are working with patient contributed data or patient generated health data. We're still identifying some existing standards that we should review. So if we've missed any, we'd like to know. We'd like your perspective. We're looking for offers to critique our white paper. We're looking for people to join our calls on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. And you can find more at our project page here. Now our Advanced Directive Interoperability Project. The project need, a patient needs a way to make their advanced directives known in case they aren't able to communicate at a future time. We've all gone through really difficult times recently, and we don't seem to be out of the woods yet. Imagine Angie. She has sickle cell disease, and she worries that if she contracts COVID-19 and she's put on a ventilator, she won't be able to communicate with medical personnel. They won't be familiar with her history and specific treatment needs and her wishes. She doesn't sound very empowered. So that's why we want to provide interoperability, so that her advanced directives are available to the clinicians that are treating her, even if she isn't able to communicate them herself or her caregivers are not able to communicate it. Angie's problem will be solved. She can use a consumer-facing tool to create a digital advanced directive or upload a scanned copy of her paper advanced directive document. Her interoperable digital advanced directive information can be made available on a registry, or she can share it electronically with her medical proxy or her primary care physician. So if they're contacted by, let's say, an emergency department, they can share it. Oh no, I pushed the wrong button. There. We have numerous use cases that we're working on and numerous data types. But let me tell you what our current state is. I'm so excited about this. Our first ballot is scheduled in January 2021. And it will be a standard for trial use. We are seeking comments on that ballot. We regularly participate in Connect-a-thon tracks. I do not think we're participating this January, but we also have weekly calls every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and we invite you to join us. Our implementation guide is a US realm specific one, because there's a lot of US regulatory rules around this that we are focusing on. But advanced directives is not a US problem. It's an international problem. We'd like people who can consider how to implement advanced directives in their country or region. And our project site is listed below, so you can get more information. And finally, our third project, patient requests for corrections. There are an alarming number of errors in medical records. Patients are getting more and more electronic access to their records, but the methods to correct them are not nearly so modern. They're opaque, they're inefficient, and they're often paper-based. They're so frustrating, many records end up incorrected. There are many studies on this, but again, I'm going to share a patient story. This is by Grace Cordovano, who has lung cancer. So you get a copy of your medical records and you dive in, trying to make sense of your new lung cancer diagnosis. Wait a second, that doesn't sound right. This is a mistake. I don't have a history of a heart condition and I don't smoke cigarettes. You call your doctor. You report the mistake and ask that they update it. They tell you to write it down and fax it. You do what you're told. A month later, you go to the doctor. There's nothing you can do but just trust that they fixed it. But you ask your doctor about it, and your doctor has no idea what you're talking about. So on your way out, you stop at the front desk and you write that correction down on paper again. And the staff promises you they'll take care of it. Again and again, it's not corrected when you go back into the office. You find your cancer is progressing. The nurse asks, are you still smoking cigarettes? You don't smoke. Your treatment operations are discussed. They're concerned of trying new medications because of your heart condition. You don't have a heart condition. You might be excluded from a clinical trial because your record is communicating the wrong information. This patient is not very empowered. The goal of the Patient Requests for Corrections project by our implementation guide is so that patients and their caregivers can use their apps, their personal health records to request corrections of their record electronically, and have any of that back and forth conversation to clarify the request with the healthcare provider organization electronically, and track the status of the request all the way through to completion. Whether the record is corrected or that correction is denied, you get to know that it's happened and when it's happened. And this just shows that workflow. So what's our current state and how can you help? Well, we have a draft FHIR implementation guide. It's been maturing nicely. We'd love you to review it. And we are holding our 4th Connect-a-thon track this January in 2021. HL7 has opened up registration for Connect-a-thon. The early bird date is December 4th, I believe. And we need more participants. We need more people serving as clients and servers. So the clients are those that are requesting corrections, and the servers are those that are fulfilling those corrections. We need people testing out this guide as well as observers. Please join us. And that's our proposal there. And I have a question for you. How does a patient get their records corrected in your country or your region? We need your perspective. We found how outdated the mechanism is in the United States. There are other countries that actually have regulations requiring this, and they're working on this, such as the Netherlands. We'd like to know what happens in your country and region so we can make our guide better. And in conclusion, I want to mention more about our patient empowerment work group as a whole. Our whole community comes together weekly on Zoom on Thursdays at 1 p.m. And we invite you to join us. More information can be found on our Confluence page. And we even have a newcomer page, everything to get you oriented to our work group and to HL7, including a welcome video. We also have a chat stream on chat.phir.org. And you can reach out to any of the co-chairs, including me, if you need help. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. There is a question from, you can read it in the chat, or I don't know, let me check if
We'll read it.
Renato is there. He's a good friend from HL7. Yeah.
Okay, it says in Brazil, our patient data protection law and the EHR system certification requires several patients' entitlement and right to review his or her data audit trail and requires corrections, deletions, and additions. Okay, my question is, I'm having trouble reading the whole chat. My question is, does HIPAA provide for the patient's right? Yes, yes. HIPAA does require it, Renato.
Okay. Congratulations for your talk, Nancy. Very, very good. We are now facing this problem in Brazil because our personal data protection law really requires that these functionalities exist in the electronic health record. So, but 99% of all electronic health records that I know does not implement patient rights to ask for corrections, deletions, review their audit trail, get a copy of the full AJR records and so on.
So I am not sure if we have the same electronic health records vendors, but I will tell you that joining our calls, we have Epic, Allscripts, Athena Health and Meditech, EHR vendors. I agree with you that many EHR vendors, this is very interesting, it's very interesting, don't have the workflow. Sometimes it's more of a manual workflow. But I think that they are listening quite intently and that things are happening. I would love you guys to join us at our Connect-a-thon tracks or at the working group meeting or on our calls, so we can make sure that our solution would work and work for Brazil well.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm very interested in this subject, and I'm sure we'll join you in trying to bring to Brazil what HL7 International is doing with this kind of interoperability. Okay, thank you very much, Virginia.
I have another question. In this working group, in your working group, there are real patients working in HL7 working group meetings? Just to present their case, yes?
Yes, and we start out in our intro session at the working group meeting. We kind of go around the room, and the thing is that there are a lot of people that end up kind of working based on their conditions too. We have our implementation guide facilitator for this particular project, the patient request for corrections. He's a patient. He does not work in the field of healthcare, but he's a programmer, and he wrote an app using FHIR to manage his blood work. And now he's a FHIR implementation guide writer. We have numerous cancer survivors in the group, numerous people that are managing their the care of their loved ones. Things get pretty passionate in the group because people care deeply about the cause, the fact that our healthcare system is just so hard to navigate for patients. So it's a really special group.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your presentation, your experience, and to be part of our conference.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you soon.